5 of Unhinged.
Thank you so much for having me. It's
Well,
been,
honestly,
we've been planning this for what, a week and a half or so, something like
yeah.
that.
And I'm so excited about this one because this is my favorite subject. And I watched your documentary and I've sent it to people and yeah, everyone's blown away. Um, so first of all, just to kind of dive right in, who was Justin Leslie before anyone actually knew the name?
Who was Justin Leslie before anyone knew me? I was just a kid growing up. My whole story kind of starts at the age of 10. I was diagnosed with a multi-system disorder called tuberous sclerosis complex, and that's where my whole journey really began, into like critical thinking and question asking and wanting to get to the root cause of things. And so before I became a forward-facing whistleblower, was just I played baseball and football in middle school and then through high school, and went to the University of Rhode Island to study pharmaceutical sciences, where I thought I was going into an industry that had good intentions on like making drugs basically to help people with. My intention was to help people with rare diseases. And then COVID basically happened right as I graduated with this degree, and COVID shook me awake. And I ended up in a part-time master's program or full-time to part-time master's program at Rutgers University in biomedical sciences. And then I ended up hating that, wanted to work inside the biomedical pharmaceutical industry to really see
Mhm.
whether I was a fit for the industry, whether I was going to like it. But I really didn't want to work for Pfizer, Moderna, or Johnson and Johnson. And by somehow God winking at me, basically, I ended up only getting a job opportunity from Pfizer as a contractor. And so I took the job as a scientist to work there on the COVID mRNA vaccine. I worked there for a little over a year from March of 2021 until April of 2022, where the details we'll get into all of it, but I
Yeah.
essentially resigned to go work at Project Veritas, which is an investigative journalism outlet founded by CEO James O'Keefe. And then I worked for Project Veritas for I think about 10 months or so. Maybe it was about a year. It was about a year. And then I
Uh,
went to go work for James O'Keefe at his new outlet, O'Keefe Media Group. I worked there for about 6 months and then I resigned. He told me he went to this thing called the Bohemian Grove, which we will also get into. And then I worked on my whistleblower documentary for about 7 months with Marty Leeds,
yeah.
who is a documentarian and Gnostic Academy pastor who I met out in California. And yeah, then I stepped forward in March of 2024 and been on
Wow.
been forward facing since. So thanks for having me on.
Incredible. Incredible journey. Oh my gosh. Were you always someone who questioned authority, or was that, as you were saying about your diagnosis, or did it purely just come from that? Or were you like a rebellious teenager?
Um, I wasn't necessarily rebellious per se. I felt like I was pretty much a good kid. I never like was a bad kid like with my mom and dad. Like I never, you know, maybe I wouldn't like make my bed all the time type stuff, but it's not like I was like going out being a troublemaker type stuff where it's like, I wasn't much of a troublemaker in school either. I didn't really do anything. Um, you know, I wasn't like a class clown or anything that was causing problems and stuff. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think it really kind of just all started with what was happening with COVID and
Mm-hmm.
realizing that this industry was, I mean, I don't necessarily know how to, it's sinister, demonic,
Mm,
whatever you want to call it. It's very sinister, the pharmaceutical industry, when you get to the root of all of everything happening, especially with COVID. Like it was such a planned, coordinated attack on humanity
yeah.
that it's, you know, it's it's a great lesson for humanity and we all need to learn from it. And a lot of us have. I'd say about 15% of the population has actually learned
You
really
say
what happened.
50 or 15?
15%, which
Is
is
that
not as high as it should be. I mean, because 15% didn't take the shot. About
right?
85% did, I think, is some
Wow.
percentages I've heard. It might be higher than 15%, but there's a lot of people who regret taking it as well, and
Oh,
they've learned through
absolutely.
that. But the reality is when like we can get into mind control in this conversation. Like that's the root of all of this is mind control and controlling how people think through so many outlets like the news and our education system.
So I imagine you trusted pharmaceutical companies before joining Pfizer. Well, you said you didn't want to join Pfizer, Moderna, or
Johnson and
before
Johnson,
Johnson and
those
Johnson.
they were the three vaccine companies for COVID.
Yeah, and why you didn't trust them before even going working for Pfizer in the beginning?
No, I probably would have been fine working for Pfizer before COVID. I didn't realize how corrupt everything was
Right.
until COVID happened. When COVID happened, I was on spring break in uh I think it was what was it, Fort Lauderdale, where, I was like just having a good time. And then the whole world started shutting down. And that's really when all the critical thinking started. It was a very slow snowball effect, and it became, a massive snowball at the end of the mountain. That still hasn't stopped, but that's where a lot of it, I suppose, started because I was still going through my undergrad and they put me into what I call Zoom University, where you're online taking these
Ah,
classes, and it's because of this so-called virus, this invisible enemy, which is all backed on fear. That's what the whole agenda is really about. That's what all of these things are about. It's either fear or convenience, mostly, where they're trying to do all of this.
yeah. So, like, when did you
But
first start?
to
Sorry, go on.
to answer your question, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
Okay.
Yeah, Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson, I would have probably worked for them if COVID um, was not a thing and been fine with it. And the reason I say I didn't want to work for them was because they were involved with this COVID vaccine. And the only reason I ended up doing it is because I didn't get job opportunities from other companies, and I became a part-time master's student instead, basically saying, like I was saying earlier, I needed to get out of this part-time master's program where I was miserable and really see if it was even worth my time, really pursuing the pharmaceutical industry. So I was like already highly skeptical of the industry, but I had all this training
Yeah.
in formulations and science, bench science work that I might as well use those skills, make some money while I was gonna be miserable either way, I suppose.
Oh, and when did you really feel something wasn't right at Pfizer? Like, what was even at the beginning, just, yeah, when did you start feeling like,
I felt like something was wrong before I even started working there, to tell you the truth, but it
like
it
it's
grew
in your stomach?
like
I mean,
right
gut.
away. Go ahead.
I was saying gut, in your gut, you mean, like,
Oh, in my gut, it was all wrong
yeah.
before I even started working there. But it became more of a snowball effect as I was, I got like a little bit sucked into QAnon and everything, where like listening to some podcasts that were talking about how like, oh, this vaccine has to do with like, Trump is gonna do XYZ and he's like playing the deep state and stuff, and I'm like, oh, this is what's happening, and I might actually be able to help type stuff. And um it really just evolved, and QAnon evolved into a huge nothing burger. I think that's a huge pacification intelligence operation, which we can also get into, where basically I knew that something was wrong right away, but I had to see it for myself. So that I think was like God winking at me in a way to like go work at Pfizer, Justin, because something's wrong, but you have to go see this for yourself. And you're one of the only people that are actually in the know that could have this opportunity to go see it for what it is and then share your human experience with everybody is like the messaging I was receiving from God. You know, that's really how I feel about the whole thing and why I was put through
Mm.
this darkness in a way to get to the light in a way, right? That's how I see it. I had to move and if I didn't go through this, then I would still be stuck in big pharma per se. And I mean, it would be great if I was outspoken now, but I mean, there it just, my life was like a movie in a way. It
Mm.
was
Oh, God.
crazy. That's why it became a movie. I put it into a documentary.
Yeah, I really, there needs to be a Netflix documentary about this, like your life and that. It was, what was your actual role inside Pfizer, just so everyone knows who hasn't seen the documentary?
My official role was a formulation and analytical scientist that I was working on the COVID mRNA vaccine. So I basically was in charge of learning 4 to 5 different scientific assays and performing bench science work on a small scale analytical team that would take batches that were being manufactured at a small scale and doing stability studies like right away, just for
Wow.
baseline measures for like right away, 24 hours, a week, a month, getting all these stability studies because these vials were all being frozen and these samples were all being frozen at different temperatures and they had to test them at different temperatures based off of how everything was playing out. Like these mRNA shots were being stored at minus 80 degrees Celsius, which is an extreme temperature to store something at. And so, like, all drugs have stability studies. So, my job was to do it for the COVID vaccine on a small scale where there are larger scales of manufacturing. Like basically, you start at a small scale, see what's going on a small scale so that you can manufacture up. So I was like a small scale bench scientist essentially that was, reporting to the head of an analytical team, and we would do new formulations that they were creating for COVID, flu, both mRNA as well as self-amplifying RNA, which is an interesting term. And yeah,
Yeah.
that's basically my role. Just small scale
Oh.
bench scientist.
Can I just ask, and yeah, because I want to ask so many questions, but because is the COVID vaccine similar to the flu vaccine, or in terms of, how do I put it without sounding, well, just absolute nonsense, basically, like,
They're all
and dark and
nonsense.
evil.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
all nonsense at this point. They're all poison. I've my friend Alec coined the term toxic poison bomb. Like that's what these shots are. Like you shouldn't be putting them inside you. They're all foreign injections that God didn't create you with, and so you don't need this stuff. Like that's the reality at the end of the day. And so you don't really know what's going on inside the body when you're injecting something foreign into you.
Do you think that about every single vaccine? Because I've had like rabies shots to go to, like, Kenya or whatever.
Yes.
I've had, really, in yellow
Yes.
fever. And oh, interesting. Well, I guess you would
Yeah.
know. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, I share a philosophy called the terrain philosophy with people where like there's the discussion that there are no viruses that have actually been proven to exist and the entire foundation of virology as a science is a big lie to the world. And it's all about how they're lying to us about what actually makes us sick.
so, okay. Oh, okay. I could go into that's like just a whole other subject. Like, what about history and viruses, plague, Black Death, da 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 da. Yeah, anyway, but
So
yeah.
the Black
Okay, go on.
Death was it's portrayed that there was a virus, but really it was just environment and how they were living, and there were rats everywhere in the streets. Like people were just getting sick based off of that. And the terrain philosophy doesn't say that people don't get sick. People get sick every single day. It's not that. It's how we get sick. It's not that there is an invisible enemy. It's
Yeah.
you are responsible for your own internal environment, and that is really why you get sick. And then the story about contagion can be, it's not even what I'm saying is not necessarily proven, but there's discussion about these things called like the biofield or like you're saying aura. Um, or I think you did you say aura earlier?
I didn't say aura.
No, you didn't say it. Something.
I I wish I did. I'm in the know.
Aura,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
people have biofields or auras, like there's energy about us in our bodies. And so when you are sharing space with people is how contagion can essentially happen, where our bodies are communicating in a way to go through a detoxification process.
Okay. And I was asking you outside of this because I didn't I believe you 100%. But the only thing I will say is like I did get a COVID, whatever you want to call it, a virus or something, where, and I just want to say this on behalf of other people that probably felt the same symptoms around the exact time that it was out. Like, yeah, I was in Mexico. There was no hospitals around. I've never had this in my life. Never ever had it again. Where me and my flatmate, we woke up after I don't know, stupid amount of hours of sleep. We couldn't get up. We just sleeping, and then coughing my absolute lungs up, like really, really, really coughing, laughing through it because I was like, I don't believe COVID exists, and you know this is nonsense. And then my lost my taste, sense of smell, taste. Like literally, it switched off like a light. I was eating a steak, I could taste it, and suddenly I couldn't taste anything, and I was like, "What the fuck? Like this is so weird." And then 3 days later or something like that, it came back like clockwork, turned back on again, and I was like, "This feels so unnatural," and that doesn't make sense to say that about a cold or a cough or a virus, whatever. It felt man-made to me, chemically weird and poisonous in my body. Everybody got it around. I had to self-isolate, and then people were getting annoyed at me for going outside and whatnot. And yeah, I was like hallucinating at times. My heart rate went down to, I think it was 40 something, and I had to walk around the house to keep my heart rate up. It was really scary, but I still didn't going to go to hospital or anything. But so, what would you say to people that had symptoms like that during that period of time? What was that?
There can be a whole plethora of things that come into play with all of that, like chemtrails being sprayed over your head, the poison that is in our foods, pesticides are in our water. Fluoride is not a good thing to be consuming, as well as when you're told psychologically, when you're told to be in a state of fear, constant state of fear, and they're also projecting onto you with the news, they're saying, oh, you're going to lose your sense of smell, you're going to lose your t sense of taste, you're going to experience sickness. They're projecting onto us what they want us to believe
Feel.
and then essentially feel. And so we are energetic beings where when they're projecting this onto us, that's something that can happen,
Yeah.
like you so that's my explanation for that. It's from my perspective and on the research that I've done from virology and even bacteria and fungi. They're not the root of what is making us sick. It's everything else in your life. They're taking these submicroscopic particles that you have to look at under a microscope and basically blaming that, where the most of the blame can be coming from the drugs and the pharmaceutical system. Ibuprofen, like ibuprofen is not a natural thing to be taking either. It's an anti-inflammatory, and a lot of
Yeah.
people overlook at that, but it's toxic for your liver. So it's
And so is
none of this stuff.
paracetamol.
Yeah.
Isn't paracetamol worse, or is that just mixed with alcohol? It's worse, paracetamol, not ibuprofen. Or is ibuprofen just generally bad for your liver?
Wait, well, you were saying ibuprofen and what?
And acetaminophen. Acetaminophen?
Acetaminophen. They're
Yeah,
about the
yeah. We
same
call it
thing.
paracetamol. Yeah.
They're like both anti-inflammatories. I mean, if you need it in an emergency situation, that's fine. But like, and this is not medical advice for those that are listening on the record, but you God didn't make you deficient in these things.
Okay, so going back to when you were in Pfizer, what was like the atmosphere like inside the company during COVID? What would you say?
Very like high cortisol levels of just high stress. I was wearing a mask every single day, and then I'd have like goggles on in the lab, so my goggles would get all foggy. I was the type of guy who would wear his mask below his nose, but
Yeah.
so I was looking for the other people with the mask below their nose because, I felt like those people were very, maybe questioning things like I was, but it was just a huge high stress environment. Like they're all about the money. It felt like they made it seem like we care about the world because we're making all these vaccines for everybody and we're saving the world, right? Like this God complex in a way, when the reality is they were making a ton of money in profits. And that's that's admissions that I got actually from like my manager Conwall Gill. She was saying the whole thing's turning into a money game, right? So, but the environment itself was very high stress, and like I was just always on edge myself because I was basically foreign to this ideology of like we need to inject everybody with poison, like that's what was going on to me. So I was like I can't get found out type stuff is and that's what happened for the first 6 months until I reached out to Project Veritas. Um,
Was there one defining moment that your like changed your perspective, or was it a lot of small moments kind of leading up?
Changed my perspective on what exactly.
Like ev- evil vaccines or poison? Wait, before Project Veritas, like
It was, I think it was a gradual small moments over time. Um,
yeah,
but it was just I kept researching and wanting to know more and just
whilst
while still working at Pfizer, yeah. I mean, I was consuming like what you'd call right-wing conservative content where they were in the anti-vaccine crowd. And, you know, what was interesting at Pfizer is that they had vaccine mandates that were coming down like November 12th of 2021, where they basically made an announcement in like August of 2021 saying anyone who is on site is going to have to get COVID vaccinated if you're not already. Like, we're at 90% vaccine status, which is great, but we want everyone on site to be vaccinated. And so they pushed that fear. And then come November 12th, I was still unvaccinated and was fine doing like this PCR test, which I was like basically, it wasn't the one you shove up your nose. It was like this, you like spit into a cup type thing. Like, I forget what exactly it was called, but it's like they were basically like collecting my DNA or whatever you want to call it, DNA. They were collecting that and, documenting that I wasn't vaccinated, but I was like not COVID positive and, COVID positive allegedly. And I would just go into work that way. And then November 12th came around and they said, this vaccine mandate is actually not being mandated. So you don't have to get it to come into work. You just have to take the PCR test still. And so I was like, okay, I called your bluff once, and then I basically stopped taking the PCR tests after November 12th, and I just kept showing up to work, and my badge kept working.
yeah,
So I said, you know what? This is
wow.
hilarious. Like it's all fear. Like they weren't actually keeping track of anything. They were just like do, causing making the sheep fall in line, where
What? Yeah. So, like, what specifically concerned you first about PCR testing?
the high cycle status of like needing to be at like 40 cycles to discover that you had COVID was a huge red flag. Listening to Kerry Mullis, who was the founder of PCR testing, hearing him talk about how Tony Fauci was a fraud, and Kerry Mullis also was killed or found dead from a pneumonia-like illness. in 2020, right before all this started. So I don't think that's a coincidence. So that was one huge thing that woke me up. I think it was what was it? But it was the documentaries by Mickey Willis, I think, or like Fall of the not Fall of the Cabal, but one of the documentaries by Mickey Willis, I think. Plandemic, right? I watched Plandemic, and that helped me in my awakening process of realizing that there was a lot of corruption going on. And so I think Kerry Mullis was in that documentary. I discovered who he was by just researching everything. And that's when, the whole PCR test is like, if you can escalate it up to 40 cycles, he's quoted saying you can find anything in anybody.
Right. But critics say like millions of doctors relied on PCR testing. What do you think do you think the doctors believed what they were told? Because not all doctors are obviously evil. Do you think it was just the narrative they were told as well? They didn't know the harmful like health risks of PCR
They're
testing
all
or?
under a spell.
Hmm.
They're all under a spell. I mean, these PCR tests, I mean, it's something you shove up your nose, and people have actually like taken apart those swabs and put those under microscopes, and they actually like move under the microscope. The particles were like moving, which
So,
is a little sinister. The theory is that those are like Morgellons or something that have to do with the basically, go into your brain or whatever and cause harm. So the people that were still taking those and shoving them up their nose, you might be vaccinated as well, which,
oh no, I took a few of those. I had to do work events and stuff, and it was horrible. um,
yeah.
God. Okay, so how does like a young Pfizer scientist end up working undercover for Project Veritas?
So it took 6 months for me really to reach out to them. I started working there in March of 2021 at Pfizer, and I mean, no, let me correct myself. I reached out to Project Veritas actually before I even started working at Pfizer because I was
Oh.
seeing these viral clips of James O'Keefe, Project Veritas with like election fraud and everything going on that was happening with Trump and this alleged stolen election where, that's another rabbit hole is elections. But yeah, long story short, reached out to them in March 2021, and I reached out to them several times after I got my job accepted, but they told me, Justin, we can't tell you what to do. Like you have free will. Like you can take the job or not take the job. But if you do take the job, please let us know if you find anything that's newsworthy and reach out to us. And so I said, okay, I am gonna go in because I have nothing better to do than go undercover basically for humanity, right? And so that's what I did. And I was still on the inside for like work was a lot, so I wasn't like undercover for the first 6 months. Like I had to like learn the job. It took me 3 to 4 months basically to really just get trained and understand what I was actually doing. So that took time, and then I reached out to them in August. They didn't want to work with me then, and then they said, "Let's work together in late September, October." So then I met with a journalist who drove down actually from Maine and met me in we met in northern Massachusetts, and he provided me with cameras, and I started obtaining information as soon as he gave that to me. So
At like at 20, were you 23 years old when that happened?
I believe I was 23 years old. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's that like at that age, your hand in hidden cameras, what's going through your mind to go into such a big corporation?
I don't know. Um, a lot of people would say that what I was doing was extremely stupid, but I was just like, their message is be brave, do something. I was, you know, given this like motivation, this this be brave, do something quote, and I said, I am in a situation to be brave and do something. So like it's my turn to step up for the world was my intention behind all of it. And, it was definitely a scary thing to go in there like strapped up basically as a spy.
Yeah.
And like with no malice towards my colleagues, it's just I've like they're all under a spell from my perspective. Like they all think they have good intentions, but at the end of the day, like or I'd say 99% of them have good intentions. So there's maybe a 1% that was just kind of all money, 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 and that was it. Like they actually knew that harm was being caused.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't what was going through my head exactly. It was just you got to be brave. It's your time to be brave, and you got to show up for the world and show up for humanity, and that's what God was telling me to do. It's this is what I
I
put you in here for.
No,
So
it's extremely brave. I wouldn't have done it even if I didn't, because I would have thought that it was going to get arrested, all sorts of things, thrown in jail, killed. Um, so
that's what Project Veritas ended up telling me was going to happen after everything happened because of this. They gave me cameras in a two-party consent recording state, which was illegal. They did
right
that and then had me go do that every single
anyway.
day, basically inside work, 4 to 5 days a week. So there were some days I would take like one recording day off, or maybe I wouldn't go into the office or something. I'd work from home. So, but yeah, they had me basically commit, there's a conversation between legal and lawful. What I was doing was technically illegal because of the laws that are written by man, right? By our government, men and women in government, where God has laws of do no harm, where who was I necessarily harming by recording them? I wouldn't say anybody considering the crimes that were being committed by Pfizer itself, right? That's my argument in which then there's the argument of jurisdiction and what jurisdiction I should be tried in if they were going to have me, try and take me in and arrest me. And basically, since coming forward, I've been largely ignored by people in government and the talking heads of the alternative media who even, promote stories similar to mine. They don't want to touch my story because of the exposure I can bring to not only Big Pharma but to the alternative media because I think it's all basically CIA. It's all a counterintelligence machine.
I mean, now, for instance, in England, the news is starting to tell the truth about it. Like, we can't take. I think it's. I think it's Pfizer vaccines. Anyway, we can't take this. You can't take that. This amount of deaths is starting to get out on the news way too late. Obviously, like how many people do you think have died from the vaccine? Like statistically,
Probably millions worldwide based off of, I mean, there's iatrogenic reactions which happen immediately, and then there's the downstream effect of just taking the injection itself, where it's going to kill you slowly over time. So it's really hard to actually put numbers to it.
gosh. And looking back, do you feel like you were recruited in good intentions, or you were used from the beginning at projects?
Was I recruited by Project Veritas for good intentions? Maybe some people had good intentions. I'm not sure. I honestly feel like the whole thing was an intelligence operation from the get-go. So, there might be good people with good hearts there that weren't necessarily in on the whole thing. But like Alicia Gamble and Brian Gamble, they are exposed in my documentary. Nightingale was her code name. Uh, to elaborate a little bit, she is potentially connected to like NSA and DARPA and like this thing called Blackwater, which is also connected to Project Veritas through Eric Prince, who Eric Prince is, he's basically this guy who ran Blackwater, which is a private military intelligence agency that just deals with high level intelligence and counterintelligence. And so, you know, why were these people involved in investigative journalism? You know, was it because they are good at going undercover? Right? These people, the people that were involved in Project Veritas, they're trained in a military FBI type fashion in a way
Wow.
where they are like I was trained in intelligence. It's all about communication. It's all about, like when you're going undercover, you have to play an alias. You
Yeah.
have to be somebody else. You have to wear a huge mask on your face, basically, and be able to have a good memory on the story you're telling to manipulate people. And so who is to say that they weren't doing that to me as a journalist, as journalists undercover, right? Like they maybe they're informants for intelligence agencies as journalists
Yeah.
undercover
To see
with
who is.
access to a whistleblower like myself who was doing some ballsy and incredibly powerful things. You know, it's a honeypot is essentially my theory, you know. So that's
Gosh.
where all that comes from. Were there good intentions per se? Potentially, yes. I mean, they would argue that Justin, we wanted to protect you because you broke the recording consent laws. And they gave me the cameras is my argument. Like you gave me these freaking cameras and wanted me to, do this story with you guys. I gave them all this information and I didn't keep any of it myself. And it blew up in my face because I felt very naive and I knew that the information I obtained was extremely powerful. There was also, if you recall from my documentary, there was an FBI raid that occurred during my time as a whistleblower. That to me was like the first sign of this is potentially an intelligence operation against me because of what I was doing. And this FBI raid had nothing to do with Pfizer allegedly until there were FOIA requests that were done saying, oh, Project Veritas is investigating Pfizer, blah, blah, blah. Like, which I was their source, but there was another Pfizer whistleblower, Melissa McAtee, who came forward in October of 2021. And so she came forward with a powerful story. A lot of people did wake up from her story, but she didn't do what I did necessarily of like literally wearing the cameras undercover every single day and like recording vice president level people. She was on a different environment. She had more of a manufacturing background in a large scale, I believe, where that's what she was doing, and it was more about her story was about manufacturing fraud, and also she was asking questions about luciferase and why these vials were glowing under a
Yeah.
black light, which I also found extremely interesting. But to land the plane on my thought, I mean, I'm just kind of rambling here and losing my train of thought. But
No, it's cool. It's such a big subject and story. It's hard to not.
yeah, I mean, it's it's huge. Like what when you look at it from because it was a double-edged sword. Do we tell Justin's story and have him break the law, but also expose Pfizer on a extreme level? Like Project Veritas was seeing millions of views on their videos. My story, if produced by them in 2021,
Oh,
would have blown the complete lid off of any vaccine narrative around COVID
yeah.
at
And
all.
saved a lot of lives.
Yes. And I mean, I still played a role in that in 2021 with the microscope stuff that was going on as well with Dr. Carrie Madej, the blonde doctor lady. I don't know if you recall her, but she was uh I basically took the vials and I put them under a microscope with Project Veritas. We transported them from Boston to New York across two state lines, which was also another reason why they were saying we can't tell your story because you cross state lines. And I'm like, well, listen, you guys wanted to cross the state lines. You wanted to bring it to your headquarters. Like, what the heck? Like, you
Yeah.
put me up in a hotel room in New York. We could have done it in Boston.
It's
So
weird.
like
What?
their whole they
Sorry.
basically they blamed the lawyers at the end of the day. And then the lawyers blamed the journalists, they blamed me. And they would say, James O'Keefe would argue that he has such a tough decision to make because of the nature of the way everything played out. And I wouldn't even disagree, but at the end of the day, their motto is be brave, do something. Why are you going to
Yeah.
have me do all of this work unless it was all for nothing completely and you're going to just play this 23-year-old kid basically who's willing to die for this cause.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Literally.
basically where I was at. I was willing to die for all of this. I didn't really care if someone killed me. I was like, I'm at that point where I would, stick my neck out for humanity. And I did, and have, and still do, just on a different level. Like I'm not working inside Pfizer anymore. So I can only really speak about my testimony and share my experience. But yeah, James O'Keefe wants to argue that he can't tell my story because he wanted to protect Project Veritas, protect all the people that worked there. That's what he
But
told me
but they didn't
in
protect you.
Hartford.
Yeah.
No, they didn't protect me. I mean, was psychologically destroyed. Imagine going through what you go through, seeing what you see, having the whistleblower conversations that I had and knew could expose what was going on with the vaccine, like this, with the conversation with Commonwealth Gill being told like the whole vaccine thing is a money game, um, was was like one of the first dominoes where I said like this is insane, like hearing hearing that from my manager, Conwall, was just mind blowing. And then Ramin Davari was saying things along the lines of people die every day when it comes to questioning him about the vaccine and booster shots.
I saw
And
that.
then I had a conversation with this guy, Nick Warren, who is the vice president of Pfizer, and he was in the biotherapeutics, pharmaceutical sciences vice president, right? And so that was his job title, and he lied to the FDA. He said he gamed the FDA when I asked him about the formulations that were going on with Pfizer and the approval process for childhood vaccines. And this VRBAC meeting is what it was called. And so there was this live stream that happened on YouTube and probably some other websites or whatever, FDA website, but it was on YouTube and it was like this 8 hour live stream. And this guy went on at 2 hours and like 33 minutes. And I find that interesting because those are the skull and bones numbers, but that's either here or there. But at 2 hours and 33 minutes, Nick Warren gets on and he starts saying that, we're going to approve the formulation for the Tris vaccine buffer when we did all of the research and development on the PBS buffer, which stands for phosphate buffer saline. And
Just for
so,
sorry,
go
just for
ahead.
people that don't have the scientific terminology, what could you explain that just for them in layman's terms?
Right. So, what Nick Warren basically admitted to on the FDA meeting is that Pfizer did all of their injecting and clinical trial work on vaccine A over here, but approved vaccine B, which their excuse is that there was a bioequivalence where the product is basically the same. but it wasn't. They changed the buffer system. They changed the step of the formulation. And so they did all of the testing, clinical testing on this one. And this one was stored at minus 80 degrees Celsius. And then vaccine B is the tris buffer, which can be stored at walk-in freezer type temperatures from like 0 to 32 degrees Celsius, which allows for ease of use. It's easier for pharmacies to use this product over this product when it's minus 80 degrees Celsius. That's an absurd storage temperature for a large scale product. So they needed this one to get approved, but they did all the testing on this one only to approve vaccine B and use a bioequivalence uh explanation is what they said. They said, "Oh, the products are the exact same except we just changed the buffer." And the reason we're doing the buffer is because blah blah blah. Like there's been vaccines, 4 to 5 vaccines have used the tris buffer in the past. The bottom line is they didn't do the clinical work on this vaccine, but still approved it. And I think it's basically to cover their butt in a legal sense. Like at the end of the day, when all this comes out, they can say, oh, well, we actually didn't do the clinical testing on this vaccine. So that's why things went wrong. And there was also the
I
emergency
mean,
use authorization, which allows them to get out of all liability, this emergency use, right? The fear from the virus,
yep.
so-called virus, that emergency use authorization is how they were able to get away with this so-called mRNA vaccine technology, which from my perspective, the mRNA vaccine technology is really not a lot different than whatever was used in like mainstream vaccines, other than the fact that this product was designed to harm, kill, and destroy people. Like, or they gave you saline and you got lucky.
Gosh,
That's
that's
my perspective.
absolutely terrifying. What concerns like myocarditis and blood clots did you find were being discussed privately before they were like public knowledge in Pfizer, let's say,
They
undercover?
were discussed behind the scenes. I mean, I would at least have those conversations with people. Like I had recordings that were discussed about like myocarditis and things like that, or just like people dying from the vaccines, and they're all overlooked. These people, they were like, we can do no wrong. Like there's nothing wrong with our formulation. There's nothing wrong with what we're doing. We're saving the world. So that's really what was happening where, I realized that there's a worldwide global clinical trial that was happening, and they also vaccinated the control group. The control group was vaccinated in, I think, all the vaccine studies that were done by Pfizer 6 months after the fact. They were like, "Oh, we're gonna vaccinate the control group. By the way, you guys are the placebo, so we're gonna vaccinate you because we want you to be protected from this so-called virus as well." Which
Protected.
is fraud. That is scientific fraud. That's not real science. That is straight up fraud. That's covering up evidence of harm.
Oh my gosh. What's the strongest evidence that convinced you personally that the vaccine was like as poison? And you were saying briefly about the glowing, you were saying, but yeah, what's the strongest evidence that convinced you?
I mean, it really became a snowball effect from researching it. I mean, the first thing was one of the first people to take it, I think, was this nurse, and she like collapsed after taking it 15 minutes. I forget what her name was, but there was a nurse who collapsed 15 minutes after taking it. She was like one of the first people to take the COVID shot, and she just collapsed, like completely fainted. And I'm not even sure if she's alive, but um, that
Was
was
that on?
one. Go ahead.
Was that on camera? I've seen several videos of people collapsing just on camera after just getting the shot. Or was that not?
Yeah, it was. what was her name? Tiffany Dover.
Is she
Yeah, her
alive?
name was Tiffany Dover. She collapsed and died after taking the COVID vaccine.
Oh my gosh.
This is the YouTube link.
Thank
Just
you.
found it. Yeah. So that was evidence one, and then it became a snowball effect as with everything. But I was paying attention to, really everything that was going on during 2021. And in October of 2021, when the boosters were happening, I had a conversation with Ramin Davari, who was a leader in the formulation process for the COVID shot. And I brought up a real life testimony where my mom's friend's mom or aunt, I forget what I said exactly. And I didn't know this person, but my mom told me about what was happening. So I used it as like real information. Took the Pfizer booster shot and she collapsed in her bathroom after like 4 hours. I was like, okay, that is enough that I need to hear for really anything to, I'm like, this isn't conspiracy. Like this is straight up, this is an attack on the world,
Yeah.
so
And what were you? So you weren't observing yourself under the microscope, but you heard from other people like what was going on with the virus or whatever under the microscope. But you weren't specifically, or
what do you mean exactly? Like with this Carrie Madej situation or when I was working inside Pfizer?
when you were working inside Pfizer. So
Nobody used microscopes.
why?
We just didn't do that.
What? You would think. That's so weird.
We didn't use microscopes to look at the vaccine, or we didn't use microscopes to look at,
Whoa.
yeah, we didn't look at the vaccine under microscopes at Pfizer. Newsflash, everybody.
That is crazy.
That's why I had to leave the lab with it to go look at it in two states because I didn't know what it looked like. There was one microscope at Pfizer that, was out, but it wasn't plugged in, and there was just no way I could use it. I also wasn't trained to necessarily use them. So,
Well, okay, so when you took it out of state, what did you find yourself?
some very sinister looking things. Um, yeah, I mean, we looked at the Johnson and Johnson vaccine first. There were these, some people might call them air bubbles, other people would call them lipid nanoparticles or some form of that. But basically, there were these black circles that were under the microscope, and they were all together, like bunched together. And then there was like this thing that was spinning around the black circle. Um, and then the Pfizer and Moderna shots looked like spider webs, like that's what we were talking off camera. It was this telephoresis
Yeah.
technology. That's what Carrie Madej calls it, and it's basically the theory of what telephoresis is it's basically a drug delivery system of these like heavy metals coming together and self-assembling. And like that's really what the theory of what is going on with these massive blood clots that are coming out of people's necks and out of their groin area is this self-assembling technology of graphene like, or whatever heavy metals are self-assembling together to clot arteries. I don't really know
Jeez.
much, like I can't observe personally. My philosophy is I can't observe exactly what's going on inside the human body. So how do I know and make a positive claim per se about how that actually works? But that's the theory, and I think it's possible, like that's a possible explanation for like why those blood clots and everything were happening.
So did anyone else independently examine your findings? You were just told after that, no, You illegally took it cross state.
Well, so I brought them to Carrie Madej, who was flown in by Project Veritas, and we examined them in Mamaroneck, New York for like 2.5 or 3 hours or so. I forget the exact time, but I got in pretty late from Boston at like 8 o'clock, and we examined them probably till like almost 11. And we looked at the three vials. We looked at Moderna, Johnson Johnson, and we looked at Pfizer. And we looked at Pfizer's COVID shot, and then we looked at the flu mRNA vaccine as well. And the flu mRNA vaccine actually looked even more potentially harmful, but I mean, they were basically the same thing. It was just like these dark, dark webs of like spikes almost, like these black, like spikes of like it looked magnetic in a way, like the like spider webby. Uh, it was just, it's really hard to explain.
Yeah. Oh,
There's She took pictures that she shared on Stu Peters' show, um, that I might be able do I have the ability to share?
yeah.
Do you want me
Never
to
done this.
share?
Please. Hold on.
Give me a sec. I can share some
From
things.
can you see share? Like I said, my computer is Mexican and Spanish. Everything's in Spanish and Mexican. So I haven't shared the screen yet. Well, can you see share screen on yours?
Yes, I'm just
Okay,
pulling
perfect.
this thing up before
It's cool. It's
I
just because if you're not the host, you might not be able
I
to share. But I want you
request.
to. I would love to see. Sorry. I'm not happy about this, by the way. I'm just happy that it's being exposed because I have just, while you're doing that, my friend Ruth, for instance, is just one of many examples. And this is like, she has no reason to make this up. Her brother fell down the stairs and had a heart attack, and they put the cause of death as COVID. And there was absolutely, he didn't have a cough, he didn't have a cold, nothing to do with it. And yeah, they just were inflating the numbers for fear. So it was crazy. I've had so many of those examples myself.
Yeah, it's all nuts.
Yeah.
All right, give me one moment. I just gotta fast forward to this spot.
Sure.
Okay, is this? So, oh, I can just drag it. So this is my whole documentary actually. So we're kind of already just like
I,
walking through it.
I'm gonna link this as
Um,
well. This is amazing. The
okay.
one you have.
So let me just play it from here. Let me know you can hear this first.
All right.
What was in the vial.
You hear it?
Yeah.
Madej became well known during the COVID-19 pandemic as a former osteopathic physician who openly opposed vaccines.
This vaccine is unlike any vaccine or medicine in the past that is being fast tracked. We are skipping safety trials, we are skipping animal trials, and people need to know that this is not a safe vaccine. It has not been proven to be safe.
Dr. Carey had brought with her 2 vials of vaccines, being the Moderna and Johnson & Johnson shots. Along with the Pfizer shots that I provided, we had that evening in our possession the vaccines from 3 of the major vaccine producers at the time. 2 different microscopes were provided in the apartment, and Dr. Carey proceeded to place the Johnson & Johnson vials on the slide. Everyone
Okay, so this is what it looked like. This is what Pfizer looked like. These things.
It's like an
This and
alien.
this is the theory of what the Tesla phoresis is. It's
Okay.
this like it looks like a parasite. It looks like or the it's Tesla phoresis parasites, Morgellons, these types of like or she also calls it Hydra vulgaris, which is like a I don't necessarily subscribe to this part of the theory that there is, this it's called a Hydra vulgaris where you're able to like regrow limbs and stuff. I don't necessarily subscribe to that. I think that's a little fear-based. That's what is being injected into us, but I think this has to do with something along the lines of how the blood clots were forming because I saw things like this as well as here, I'm gonna continue to play it and then I can pause it.
And there saw these black circles.
There's this, like these, like big black lines with
Yeah.
like it's almost like an antenna or something, and like these had ends to it. So these were the black shards I'm talking about. All right.
And what looked like parasites.
Yep. So it has tentacles in a way, right? It's like, what the heck is this thing? You know, I don't know exactly what this is, but
Right.
I sure as you know what, don't want to inject it into me.
No.
Revolving around them.
And so this is the Johnson and Johnson one I was talking about. It's a big black circle, right? And then
As if
this
they had a
thing right here is swimming around it.
mind of their own.
Oh,
And so the this black circle was basically going right up to the edge of the vial. Right? It was or edge of the slide, I meant.
yeah.
Let me
Both
continue
had
this
similar
up.
parasitic-like.
This is another picture, very similar.
Whoa.
So yeah, I'm not necessarily making positive claims as to like I know exactly what this is. You know, I'm
Have
Mr.
you?
Smart Guy, but I saw this and I don't want to inject it into me or other people until, you know, like we figure out what that's going on.
Do you have slides before with healthy cells and stuff, or and then after
Yeah,
being
so
injected?
there's after this I do a comparison as to like well what I saw when it's gonna explain my old, you know, the journalist, his name is Sundance. He got his blood removed from his arm and put onto a slide, and then we put the vaccine onto it, and then we looked at his live blood analysis, and it coagulated, meaning it clotted
Yeah.
immediately within, you know, like immediately being 20 to 40 seconds or so. The blood basically did this, right? It all came together and it stopped flowing and moving. So this is what it actually looked like.
Creatures in them, though they looked a little bit different from the Johnson
Give
and
it a
Johnson.
second.
Veritas insider Sundance had his blood drawn, and Dr. Carey put it on the slide with the Pfizer vaccine, and the blood cells coagulated immediately. Now, I am not claiming that I had any idea what was happening on the slide, as this was a phenomenon occurring outside the body, but it was absolutely nightmarish to witness.
So here's a picture of non-vaccinated blood. Right, this is what you're supposed to see, and this is what his blood pretty much looked like without vaccine product. And then this is what it looked like with it in a way.
Oh
Like it
my
start
gosh.
I'd say this is a little more exaggerated because this is probably, you know, more over time, like
Right.
what it's, you know, a vaccinated subject, but it started doing this. It started clumping everything together and looking like this. So,
I mean, there's the biggest piece of evidence I've seen so far on.
yeah, so and then I mean she went on to Stu Peters, right? And she started talking about this, which is where the rabbit hole starts to begin. Because what I was saying earlier is that like I still made a difference per se, being this whistleblower behind all of this,
Yeah.
because this was released in 2021, right? This was, you know, it saw 785,000 views at the time when I took the screenshot. But yeah, I mean,
No, you. I mean, I watched your documentary. Like, you are a major part of uncovering like the truth, which is why I'm so like honored that you're coming on. Like, this is amazing.
yeah.
So
So,
yeah, I'm just. My mind is blown by that. I'm glad I didn't do it. But what would you say to people? Because people used to say to me, like, I'll be honest, I've struggled with addiction, with drugs and alcohol and things. So they'd be like, "What? You won't take a vaccine, but you will, let's just say, snort cocaine in the past. Well, you don't know what's in that." And I'm like, "Yeah, but that's like 24 hours. This will stay in your, I'm assuming, system for at least 10 years, 20 years, like." And you don't know when you might just die like one day. Like, what would you say to people? That's their argument of like, you know,
It's hard
people
to
that,
say.
mm,
It's hard to say. I mean, detoxification is a huge thing. Am I still sharing my screen?
yeah, there's a
Do
black screen.
oh,
Cool.
are we back? I
Yeah.
can go back and forth to that if you want to like go back to the
Yeah,
documentary,
please.
but I mean, I'm not sure
Oh,
what other questions you have for me.
I have how long have we been?
It's like 11:39. So we're
Okay.
still
All right.
going. I mean, we're
Good.
we're full blown into the conversation, so I still have
Yeah.
time. I'm happy to answer whatever you have.
Thank you so much. So, if you can, like, the probably, well, I don't know if this is a sensitive subject or not, but if you could tell us about the Tristan Walker investigation, like, what was it like repeatedly dating people as part of undercover investigations?
Good question. I'd say it's pretty traumatizing as a straight man to go undercover and pretend to be gay and have to like learn how it all works and learn the gay dating atmosphere and like come across as gay. Like in my documentary, I talk about how I pierced my ears actually. Um,
Yeah.
Even just it took one undercover meeting. I met Jordan Tristan Walker in 9 months into my undercover work, and um, basically like the first one of the first meetings I went on was with this gay, queer, homosexual like cross-dressing teacher who was like pushing diversity, equity, inclusion stuff, um, kind of on kids in the state of New York, and I really woke up to just how the gay dating atmosphere is, like especially with these like really flamboyant types. And he basically, I felt like he was like questioning if I was actually gay because I don't have like much feminine, like anything feminine about me. Like,
Hmm.
so that's why I went in and pierced my ears because I'm like, I need to lean into this role,
Yeah, of course.
if I'm, because, and the whole reasoning behind going undercover as a gay guy was because I need access. And so that's what Project Veritas does, undercover journalism, and the there's the big A is access and availability. And so the reasons why the women are extremely successful is because they go on these apps like Hinge and Bumble and Tinder. You get these, you know, big subscriptions, right? You pay for the most expensive subscription or like second most expensive subscription, and you just get unlimited swipes, and you can basically swipe on whoever you want, right? You set your location, you set your own alias up, and you're looking for job titles on this screen, or you're looking for people who look influential, right? If they don't have a job title, like someone in a suit, you might swipe on them, figure out who they are. But you're basically looking to figure out what people do as fast as you can so that you can get in front of them. And so with the women, it's with men. For men, it's also with men because I mean, in my situation, like I had those three dating apps, and I think the ratio for the matches was like I'd have like 600 guys match with me, and I'd have like 50 women match with me. And like the guys had all their job titles and have these big influential job titles. And I'd have like one woman who is like maybe a subject, because subject is someone who is actually worth getting a story on, right? So like I went on like one or two meetings with women, right? Like one journalist I went on a meeting with basically, and she thought I was cute, wanted to date me and everything, but like I was like, this isn't a story. Like this is kind of a waste of my time, you know.
Yeah.
So I that's the nature of the work. So you're either doing this like gay undercover work, or you're going undercover like inside bars in Washington, D.C., and trying to talk to politicians or people that are in the know, people that work for politicians, right? And so
That's
that's
crazy.
that's what I was doing. And so that's why I pierced my ears because I needed to lean into this being flamboyant a little bit and so, I
Yeah.
had to do that and I would basically tell them like, "Oh yeah, like I'm a top tier gay guy, so like you can't even kiss me until like the fifth meeting." And
Right.
like my goal and intention is to get a story by like the third the third date, which is how it actually played out with Jordan Walker. So
Yeah.
to
Well,
address your question, go ahead.
for anyone that doesn't know, what was his job title and position?
mRNA scientific planner at Pfizer was his job title. He worked in New York City, and I met him on Bumble. So the story of how I connected with him on Bumble is a intern at Project Veritas was swiping using the high-end subscription and matched with him. This was a younger gentleman who was actually under 21, and he matched with Jordan. And then on these apps, you can share profiles. You can share like, oh, I think you guys would be a good match. So he shared his profile with me. I swiped, and then Jordan matched with me. And so that was like pre-Thanksgiving, I think, in 2021, and then or 2022 actually, excuse me, 2022, pre-Thanksgiving time, I believe, and we met two times. First time he started to explain after about 45 minutes. We didn't talk about work, and then first thing he starts talking about work is how Pfizer's thinking about mutating COVID was like the big
Yeah.
quote that was said that made the video extremely viral
Yeah.
and how they're basically preemptively looking to create vaccines based off of these mutations. And then he called it directed evolution on the second meeting instead of gain of function. So Project Veritas wanted me to get him to admit to gain of function research from Pfizer, where he said directed evolution, and that Pfizer is directing the evolution of people in this world. And so, yes, it was a powerful story. It got like 40, 50 million something views on what I call my friends have called TwatterX,
I saw it. I
Twitter.
saw it at the time. Yeah. Everybody
So
I knew
that
saw it.
story went extremely viral, especially in the conservative media. It made Tucker Carlson's show two times. And I mean, there's pros and cons to the story because it exposes big pharma for, doing all of this crazy mutating of a virus, right? But my perspective is I also didn't even believe in viruses at the time. So
Yeah.
there's this big this is where mind control comes into play from my perspective. Like, and this is where truth is, right? Like from from my world point of view, I was involved in a psychological operation on the world where I firsthand played a part. And then there's also the argument of who is Jordan Walker? Was he a plant in front of me as well to allow this story to be propagated? I don't know. I don't have the answers to those questions. Was this guy's life destroyed?
Yeah.
Where is he now? I don't even have those answers. I know his life was destroyed if he truly was a Pfizer mRNA scientific planet,
I feel
which,
like, sorry, his acts, I don't believe, I don't know, obviously, but are pretty good at judging. Yeah, his reaction was not acting. Like, he looked, was it James O'Keefe at the end who was doing
yeah,
follow up?
James sat down in front of him in the pizza restaurant.
Yeah, he looked, I mean, you can't fake that reaction, not even Johnny Depp, you know, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
so
Yeah.
that's the thing too. Like, why was he saying that Pfizer is mutating COVID to someone undercover? And then he starts basically saying that I was lying. I was lying, I was lying, I was lying. to
Yeah.
basically try and get in the pants of the person who works for you. So that's a real discussion. Like, what were those conversations actually had at Pfizer? Was he literally just trying to get in my pants? Like, can
Mm.
both be true? Yes. We're only that's what the whole story really was. It was big on speculating. Like, what did this guy say the truth, right? Like,
Yeah.
he said what he said. It's on camera, but is it real?
Yeah.
And so we try to basically authenticate it, or add it through like telling the story and then having other sources come forward, but that didn't really happen. And so to me, it was kind of just shiny propaganda on a silver platter. Like, you're kind of saying like he was probably just lying to me. And the reality of the situation is that, like I said, it's shiny propaganda on a platter. When you share my perspective of the terrain, you can't mutate a virus that doesn't exist. And so it's all part of layered mind control, which I was discussing earlier. Like, mind control is real. This is part of that. They want those in the critical thinking space that are awake to vaccines to not be able to wake up to the fact that there is no virus. So
Mm.
you need to propagate them by having gain of function, which is where the COVID origins allegedly were from, right? That if you're in the conservative media space, you were consuming content consuming content that COVID came from a lab, which it did come from a lab. It came from
Yeah.
a computer lab,
Wow.
meaning the
Yeah.
computer lab is they basically just take a sample and they throw it into one of these machines, and it spits out the DNA of this so-called virus of adenine, guanine, tryptophan, blah, blah, whatever the heck these ADGCT, right? That's what DNA is, these letters. And so it spits these random letters out, and then they're just like, oh, okay, we'll try and replicate this. And whenever they can just replicate something like once or twice, they're like, oh, that's what we have. And so it's all pretty much nonsense at the end of the day. And so,
Because you said to me before, or was it you or that your documentary, that there were no one could present any evidence of the actual COVID virus
no,
anywhere.
Christine Massey is a independent researcher out of Canada who has a master's degree in science. I forget what type of science, but a master's degree in science. And she did these things called FOIA requests, which are called Freedom of Information Act. And she went to her government, the Canadian government, and asked like 70 different organizations involved with public health.
Mm.
So she asked like the CDCs of Canada, as well as asked CDC in the United States and WHO and all these other huge health organizations that were in the public health space, asking for simple evidence following the scientific method of, can you isolate the SARS-CoV-2 virus that causes so-called COVID-19? And can you provide a scientific paper based off of these terms described? And she basically said, can you isolate, and use the word isolate of
Mm.
separating something from something else, right? And so they couldn't. And this would be a good time to actually explain the philosophy of how it actually works, where there is no isolation of a virus because they've never taken snot from a sick person and isolated it, right? And proved that this causes a disease. So the scientific process itself is, what they basically do is they take snot from a sick person and they put it into what's called a cell culture plate with cells, and then the cells die, and then they call it a virus. And so they also end up treating the cells with like antibiotics that are stressful to the cells, which can also cause cell death. And so basically, they're calling cytopathic effect of cells cell death. They're calling that a virus when they've never actually made an isolated form of the so-called virus and separate it from the mucus itself. They're separating it from our human cell tissue. They're simply making an assumption that, well, the cells died, there must be a virus in there. That's all they're doing. So they have
Wow.
a presupposed assumption saying, oh, yeah, we know there's a virus in there, and therefore the virus is causing all these cells to die. When at the end of the day, I mean, they're treating it with antibiotics and pharmaceuticals, and that's what is causing cell death. And so that's really what virology is, guys, in about 5 seconds or less.
That's mental. And horrifying as well. To just, I mean, I don't believe, yeah, big pharma. Like I could go off on tangents about freaking Xanax and shit like that. Anyway, but yeah, this is about COVID. But after that, at one point you said after like with James O'Keefe, everything just felt like a big giant show or whatever to you. What do you mean by that? Like, what just exploded for you? Is like, oh, the whole world is a sham, sort of thing.
Um, at what point?
Mm.
I felt like it was always a show. Ever since I met him, I felt like it, like just the day that I met him. If you have kindness in your heart, if you have good intentions in your heart, you don't let a story like mine not go public. Like if you're a man of God, like, and
Yeah.
you fear no man, then like you say you do, right? Be brave, do something, and you claim to be a man of faith, then you're gonna go release this story and save lives. Because if you can save one life, then it's worth it. So ever since the day that I met him, I felt like he was an actor. But
Wow.
going to work for him, it just grew and grew and grew. And it just all these, you know, like he'd say he was apolitical, but anytime a story came to expose Republicans, it was like, oh, like, is it worth it to do that? Type stuff. Or, um, the fact that he has a theater background is interesting. He,
Does he?
yeah, he did a play called Oklahoma, spent like $20,000 of donor money of Project Veritas, which I think is illegal, but he did that anyways. And then, um, put it out with the company. And then, yeah, he's big on dancing. And not to say you can't have fun and you can't be a dancer, right? Like, that's all fine and dandy, but like, just the theatrics of being a truth teller, or
So
it was all
you
there.
you basically started to believe that he wanted views instead of exposing the truth. He just wanted fame.
Well, and he admitted that actually in the film. He admitted that after the Jordan Walker story. He said that this story could make us a ton of money basically based off of a subscription model. He's like, we would get hundreds of thousands of subscribers overnight.
Eesh. Did you pull him up on that?
Hmm?
Did you like ask him? Like, did you say like, "Excuse me, like, dude, do you think
No,
this
I
is?"
just was recording that and I just
Okay.
have that I have that audio.
Yeesh. Oh my god, this is
That's
crazy.
in the documentary for those who want to check it out.
Yeah,
It's there.
I saw that. I was like, what the actual F? And okay, what made you decide to become a double agent? And what is a double agent for people that don't know?
I was always a double agent from the beginning of working for Project Veritas.
Mm-hmm.
What made me decide it? I just I made a promise to God that I was gonna go get my story back. His At the end of the day, what happened? I said I'm gonna go get this Pfizer story back some way, somehow, and share it with the world. And it doesn't really matter who is in my way, whether I think they're my friend or not, because anyone who's against me is most likely my enemy.
Did you? I
Because
just want to know. Sorry, go on.
I just felt like there's an innocence about my story. And so if you didn't want my story public, I felt like you were the enemy, either based off of mind control or you were actually. like not a friend and you're a foe.
Did you feel guilty? Just one question about guilt. Did you feel guilty at any point, like in the dates or anything? Or no, you were just like, no, this is the bigger picture, like looking at the bigger picture rather than guilt.
Guilty how, like in what sense? Can you just elaborate a little bit? Like for
Well, like seeing his reaction, like you said earlier, potentially had that destroyed his life or career or whatever. Did you feel like any guilt if that was the case, or like I said, you just had the big world picture in your head of like I'm saving people?
maybe a little bit. Because at the end of the day, he is just a soul trapped in a human body, you know.
Yeah.
He was created by God too. So I think that there's always a little bit of grief or guilt if you like if someone's life is destroyed per se, right? But I don't have any ill will towards Jordan. I mean, he said what he said to me,
Mm-hmm.
and I was doing a job,
Yep.
and it was the alternative media machine that exposed him for who he was and what he said to me, so like he can't take back what he said to me, whether he was lying or telling the truth based off of Pfizer mutating COVID. And so he definitely learned a lesson to not overshare on
Yeah.
your first two meetings. And maybe he was an intelligence operation, maybe he was an asset that was meant to be put in front of me. I don't really know the answer to that question. It's hard to answer that question. I don't think I'll actually get the answer. It's simply speculation on my end, right? Where all of my perspective is that the whole thing was an intelligence operation from the beginning, but they also use useful idiots. I was a useful idiot. Could Jordan have been a useful idiot? Yes.
You're not an idiot.
Well, what I mean by useful idiot is I was an asset to them.
Mm.
I became I'm not saying I was an idiot. I was a useful idiot to them,
Right.
or
Right.
I played useful idiot to allow that story to come out, to be an asset to them, to then use like use that story against them to build rapport with them, which is how I actually got my Pfizer story back, is the Jordan Tristan Walker story. I got my Conwell Gill footage. I got my Ramin Davari footage back based off of what happened with Jordan Walker. It was my bridge to reobtaining my actual Pfizer story, which that was just a divine intervention from God, I think. Like Nightingale shared my story with me because James, basically what happened, Jordan's Walker story happened, and we needed a follow-up story for this Pfizer stuff. And so I, being the Pfizer scientist, had these insider recordings, and they were like, well, should we tell Bam's story? That was my code name, Bam. They're like, should we tell Bam's story? And they speculated on it for a little bit. They actually had some meetings about it, and they said they came to the conclusion, no, we shouldn't touch the story with a 10-foot pole based off of the legal uh, advice, right? So, I mean, we could we could play the evidence that I reobtained if you want.
Yes. I mean, this could be as long as. I mean, it's such a big subject, so
Yeah,
as
I
you're
don't
done.
mind. I'm free for most of the afternoon.
Thank you.
I can call it quits at some point,
I
but
hope to God they don't ban this on YouTube. Yeah.
well, we're going really in depth on everything. I'm getting a lot off. It's always healing for me to share this information. So,
It's fascinating for me and a
so here's
lot
the
of people
Pfizer
like.
stuff, and then here is this is Melissa's story. Okay, so sorry, I'm gonna make this bigger so I can actually see what I'm doing.
There's James.
Hmm. Okay. So here is some of my evidence. So this is my manager, Conwall.
Mhm.
And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, that I don't believe that this lady is necessarily evil. She just is under a spell, which is why she
Right.
says what she says to me.
Okay.
All right, so here we go, and then we'll watch these clips one at a time, and we can have conversation about each one.
In this meeting, I asked her if it was okay to give people another experimental injection regarding the booster shots, or if it was a drive for money. So, are we,
But we are still
like, do we
good at
know
it.
that, like, I mean, just thinking, like, ethically, like, is it okay to, like, give people another experimental injection? Like, are we sure it's going to be safe and effective? Or are we just rolling these out because we want to roll them out for money? Like,
Yeah. This is a real time data that we are generating. We don't even know. When we started vaccinating people, we had no idea how it's going to look like.
yeah.
mRNA vaccines have been there for 50 years, no, but nothing made to clinical. Why? Because mRNA vaccines have been known to have side effects.
Right. But
Moderna has been working on it for 10 years. This is not the new thing, right? But why it did not reach trial was because of all these side effects. We, Pfizer and Moderna, used the emergency and the pandemic to kind of get through it now.
That's crazy
I
to
know.
me.
That's the evidence right there. Like, never went to clinical
We,
trial.
Pfizer and Moderna, used the emergency and the pandemic to kind of get through it now. But when the fact that there was no actual pandemic, they created a real situation just to inject the world with poison and kill people. Crimes against humanity.
Oh gosh.
All right, that was just the beginning. I just had to stop because every time I rewatch this stuff, I'm like, this is insane.
But you
I
know,
bet.
we didn't. But even CDC noted we
so
don't
it
have
could
data.
never get FDA approved until we had this emergency, right? Like we had to try something new. So, but why didn't we try like a vaccine formulation that has been effective in the past, like with egg yolk or something that they used with flu, right? I don't know.
Yeah, so we here did not do it because we already have collaboration with BioNTech on flu before actually COVID happened. So mRNA. So what a story behind we starting on this because BioNTech guy Ugur Sahin, the BioNTech CEO, he called Catherine Jensen.
Sahin.
Yeah, he called Catherine Jensen and he's like, hey, I have this technology, but I don't have resources to make it big. So Catherine was like, well, we had a collaboration in place before for flu. So we wanted to give it a shot. It is a new mRNA thing. Nobody knew anything about it. We never had this. Everything is just fresh from last
Kind of like
year.
learning on the fly.
So it was on a fly. Pandemic, just roll it out, roll it out, roll it out. There was no time to think. It was a time to act.
Who Conwall was mentioning in this clip is Catherine Jensen.
So I think that's also crazy.
Yeah.
Just it's not a time to think, it's a time to act. We're just gonna inject the world with this product.
Yeah.
And admitting that it was used, like this formulation, this mRNA product was being used in flu formulations back in like 2018. So like I was saying earlier, this was premeditated. They had this flu vaccine that they wanted to poison people with, but they needed big scary COVID virus to manipulate the world and get you to introduce this product from a invisible enemy based off of what the news is telling you, right, to be afraid of. And so, like, the mind control is so real.
Yeah, she seemed to have, like you said, I think she had good intentions, but yeah, the brainwashing is unreal. Like, but that's just ridiculous. And everyone was saying, trust the science, trust the science, trust the science. Like, what the hell? I mean,
That in my film we like showed evidence of all of that. Like it, oh, 95% efficacy, where behind the
No.
scenes she's like, we have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, we just need to act. Who cares what's in the vaccine? Shove a load of shit in it, just put it in
throw
people.
throw shit at the wall and hope it sticks, right? That's basically what
Yeah.
she's saying. So like if people heard this in October of 2021, like if you were
Sorry.
double jabbed, you definitely weren't taking booster shots. And like if you were not jabbed at all, like you were getting vaccine mandates pushed on you at that point in time.
Gosh, I know.
A lot of people caved. So, I mean, if this evidence was out there, then that's something that could have steered policy, steered a revolution. So,
Oh, I,
this is a little there's still more on Cornwall, so I'll let this play. But this is on Katherine Jensen, just talking about who she is. The former head of vaccine research and development at Pfizer.
I'm Katherine Jansen. I develop vaccines which help millions of people around the world to be protected from nasty and deadly infections. Currently, I'm developing a vaccine candidate to help prevent COVID-19.
In an interview in 2020, Catherine confirmed what Cornwall was saying, where she fully admitted that Pfizer was flying the plane as they were building it. This is a huge admission as to the nature of the so-called science that was happening behind the scenes.
The most chilling thing for me was when we walked our dog and we go by the hospital complexes and you see one refrigerated truck after the other appearing in the parking lots in front of the hospitals.
The refrigerator truck morgues.
Morgues, right. It was just chilling, absolutely chilling. That was absolutely fueling the desire to come up with the vaccine no matter what it takes.
This was kind of personal.
It became very personal. I saw this as an enemy.
The virus.
The virus. I took this very personally. I wanted to fight it, beat it, fight it down. It was, nothing else mattered.
I also have the transcript of audio that I obtained on October 28th, 2021, from the former head of pediatric formulations, Bakul Bhattangara, reiterating what Catherine and Cornwall were saying, claiming once again that they were building the plane as they were starting to fly it. Cornwall then goes on to say that the vaccine was not so effective and says that the mRNA and LNPs are very sneaky.
Only Johnson and Johnson side effect came out quickly, that there was a clot that was happening with Johnson and Johnson's.
Right.
But other than that, mRNA and LNP are very sneaky, I think. We are not still seeing a lot of huge complications.
She goes on to highlight how the clinical trials completely skipped normal clinical trials and went straight up, all at once, to phase 3.
There are 3 types of trials, right? Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. We just went straight up, right?
Yeah.
We just did this, but this is why it takes 10 years for a vaccine to come out.
Yeah.
It takes years of, observation, blah, 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 1, then 2 and 3. Here we are doing everything at the same time. So everybody is as puzzled.
Yeah.
Nobody has 100, even CEO, Pfizer CEO and even Ugo Sahin won't have answers. Because they are looking at it, closely watching.
I think that's crazy. And then
Yeah.
this next part is crazy.
At this point, that's all we can do. And I feel it's also becoming a money game.
And then she closes she put her mask over her face.
Oh,
I feel like it's
I
also
feel-
becoming a money game.
Of course, that's self-care all over the world. Oh my God.
Yeah. So that's my conversations with Cornwall that should have went viral in 2021, but I reobtained this footage right after Jordan Walker, like 2 days. It happened. I fell into my lap. And I
Yeah.
recorded this on my phone. I screen recorded the whole thing because they basically had a Vimeo file with this information saved on their database or whatever the heck it's called.
I feel sorry for her, but at the same time, she didn't seem to feel about being a money. Well, yeah, it's not like her fault, is it? But my God, it's mental. Are you gonna play another clip or can I
I
listen?
can. Do you
Please.
want me to keep moving? Like, so this guy's her boss. This guy Ramin.
May as
18.
well. I mean, yeah.
This clip was from October 21st, 2021. Just listen to what he has to say about the safety issues of the vaccine.
My mother called me 2 days ago and said that her therapist's friend told her that her friend took a booster shot and died like the same day, I think, in her bathroom. I don't know if it was Pfizer, but like,
The only booster shot so far is been Pfizer.
so I mean, well, it must have been Pfizer. And I'm just like concerned that, like, I mean, she was relatively old. She was 77 apparently. But I mean, it's kind of scary to me.
Well, that's the thing. It just people die every day.
I think it's something that we should look into and make sure that the
Well,
boosters
people
are.
are looking into it.
Yeah.
It's just not our job to look into that.
Yeah.
Basically. But there are people within Pfizer, all the political people.
Okay.
And the safety people.
Right.
There are people who are not only looking at that, actually, there are reports that come to Pfizer, zillions of them every day.
Zillions.
Oh, yeah.
God.
Do you think Pfizer gets mad when they? The zillions is an interesting word to use.
Isn't it? Because as well in England, they were like, every single thing was there's barely any, there's very minimal side effects and very minimal reports. And this was on the official NHS, whatever, like, you know, all of the websites and official NHS, blah, 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 was just saying there's little to no side effects and there's been basically little to no reports of any damage or anything at all, you know? So they were hiding all of these completely everywhere.
Yep. Yeah. I wonder why he
Zillions.
used the word zillion.
Because,
You know.
and no one cared. No one cared. That's the crazy thing. How many psychopaths are there in the world that just care about money? Like, it's actually scary to me. I'm a really big empath. I have BPD, but I'm a big empath. I couldn't. It's just money.
So the word zillion is not a real mathematical number, but it's an informal slang used to playfully describe an extremely large, unspecified, or infinite amount.
Yeah, infinite. Yeah, like more than millions, zillions.
Yeah. So the rest of what he says is great too. And then, I mean, we already talked about Nick Warren a little bit, so I explained how all that works, but this is good stuff, so I'll play the rest. Don't mandate it.
From a business perspective,
Yeah.
it's just like saying, you think the chips companies, they're going to get mad if somebody says chips is not good for you? Of course.
Probably.
Yeah.
But I mean,
they don't care if people just eat chips all day and die. Because their job is
to sell chips.
Engineering it the way that I take. No, it's not even selling it. It's for me to take it, basically, right? Because otherwise I won't buy it.
Right.
Yeah. So you forget about those parts of business, basically. So
yeah,
they're engineering it specifically for me to take the next one.
Right.
So increasing my consumption and increasing my consumption, guess what? It's going to affect my heart, and I'm going to die.
Yeah.
And nobody's talking about that.
Yeah, I know. That's why I don't eat chips. They're giving out free chips.
And
I can't believe he said that to me in real time because I knew he was talking about the vaccine basically, but he wasn't talking about the vaccine. Like it was like a metaphor that he created. And I was too scared, I guess, to really pull the trigger because I mean, it was an admission, but it wasn't, but it's huge. Like it's still huge content coming from a formulation scientist who was in charge of all vaccine formulations for COVID.
And the way he said, and nobody's talking about it, and it was laughing at the end. It's actually evil.
Oh, yeah. So Project Veritas thought this guy was evil.
Well, if you can laugh about that, of course you're evil. Like,
Yeah. So I think this is it. Or oh wait, why is it Zoloft? Okay, so then
with
this
this.
is Kim Witsack, who was another whistleblower who her story wasn't told, but we can just the audience should go check out the documentary
Yeah, I'll
to
link it.
check out Kim's story. I'm trying to figure out. There we go. Stop sharing. Back. Not sharing anymore.
Oh, hi. Yeah. Can I just quickly jump to the FBI raid? Because I know I haven't got like.
Yeah,
So, where were you when you heard about the FBI raids and what was your immediate reaction?
I was in Boston, but my immediate reaction was that this is interesting. This is a little scary. Am I in trouble? Like,
Yeah.
why did they raid the FBI? Or why did the FBI raid Project Veritas? Well, I'm a whistleblower, and this had to do with right after, Carrie Madej, who we already showed. I did this microscope expose with her in it was October 14th, I think was the date. Because I gotta have my dates correct to tell the story, right? So I started recording in early October, late September, early October. October 14th is when we did the deed and did this microscope expose. And then she went on Stu Peters on October like 21st, right? And then this FBI raid occurs November 4th and November 6th of these two journalists first, Spencer Meads and Eric Cochran, were the two ex-journalists for Project Veritas, journalists, source handlers, things like that, right? That's what they were, basically. And Eric also was a Pinterest whistleblower like years prior, and he became a journalist, similar to how I was a whistleblower and I became a journalist. But his story was told publicly, where mine was not told publicly, but I still became a journalist. Eric got raided by the FBI. Spencer Meads got raided by the FBI. Spencer worked for O'Keefe for like on and off for like 8 to 10 years or something like that. So they were both raided on November 4th. And then November 6th also rolls around, and James gets raided by the FBI, which was a big deal in the public news space. And the news outlets like Sean Hannity talked about how this is a crime, blah, 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 the freedoms of speech, blah, blah, blah. Even the ACLU, which is apparently a leftist leaning news organization, said how this is a infringing on the First Amendment, right, as freedom of the press, like multiple rights uh impacted. And so I would agree, right? The FBI shouldn't be raiding journalists. But
Absolutely not.
what if the journalist in his news organization is also honeypot that is working with a whistleblower that has a very powerful story for the COVID-19 vaccine? Was it all scripted is the question that I bring up. And that's a theory. I don't have direct evidence and proof of that, but when you put my whole story together, it is a theory for sure. Where, listen, like what happened and the timing of it all doesn't add up for what they're necessarily saying. They're saying it had to do with Ashley Biden's diary being stolen, which was a story that they investigated over a year prior in October of 2020, which was done in Florida. The Biden diary was owned by Veritas or whatever, and then they ended up, I forget if they sold it or whatever the heck happened. But yeah, like they had this information a year prior, and then the FBI just so happened to raid right after this Carrie Madej story with Stu Peters happened in October 20th. They raided them 2 weeks after. And my theory is that this all happened to scare the crap out of me. And look, we're getting raided by the FBI, Justin. We
Yeah.
can't tell your story, right? You also broke the law. We can't tell your story. Like, well, we broke the law together, guys. You
Yeah,
did this stuff with
exactly.
me. And then the FBI raids him.
So,
And that was a huge driving force as to why they weren't going to tell my story. And so it was just another hill, another obstacle.
but I mean, you could say, like, because, you know, you could say that they genuinely were trying to protect you. Because what if you had been thrown in jail for the rest of your, and or disappeared or whatever? Like, are you sure, like, you're sure deep down that they weren't just trying to protect you?
Yeah, I am sure. I mean my gut always told me that this was fake.
Yeah.
Honestly. I mean, that's how I feel about it until proven otherwise.
How
Because
was your mental? Sorry,
the
go on.
FOIA requests also show there were FOIA requests that were done that Pfizer had something to do with this raid as well. Like there were representatives of Pfizer that had to do with this raid. So that would be me, a
Yeah.
representative of Pfizer, because I was a contractor, so I represent Pfizer.
So I've only got a few questions. I want to know, how was your mental health after after all of that? Basically, at that point, after the FBI raids, were you like? Because I've seen you do videos on. I mean, it might be completely unrelated, but during drink and stuff. Were you like starting to deteriorate and drinking more and stuff at that point, or were you like?
I actually, so I stopped drinking in 2022, right when I actually started undercover journalism.
Oh,
Um, yeah, I mean, my path with drinking and stuff was it was kind of coming to an end, I think, but or not at no, that's not true. I would still have, like drinking episodes, but like with the FBI raid and everything, like yeah, I mean, I forget if I was like still drinking extremely heavily. I was more of like a binge drinker per se. Like I
same.
wouldn't drink every day, but it would be like a, a thing that, you know, like I mean, society has normalized binge drinking in my perspective as well. Like they say like you shouldn't really have more than like two or three drinks, and it's normalized to have like eight, nine, 10 drinks
Oh yeah, that's what
in
I have.
one, so it's like not shaming those that do, but it's kind of like, well, getting drunk is at this point, you're like, it's a spiritual thing where you're opening yourself up to spirits, right? Alcohol is
Mm.
called spirits for a reason. And it's like just, things that are not godlike are brought into your life, I think, when you are drinking per se, right? Like I think people are more likely to sleep with someone else that they've never met, XYZ. Like
Been there.
all these things happen when you allow alcohol to rule over your life, versus giving your life to God.
I'm 31 days today, and I have isolated myself the whole time, not done anything other than focusing, and it's amazing. I feel great. But I am
That's
like planning
awesome.
on. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah, how long have you got now?
4+ years. Yeah, June 9th, 2022. I've had like a sip or two with like communion, basically.
Yeah.
Like for like, that's like spiritual religious stuff, but like not like getting drunk off of it, it's like just a few sips. So, um,
Wow.
that's not to shame people that drink or whatever. I think drunkenness is wrong. Personally, I'm convicted on that. And for me, my personal conviction is I just don't drink because I can't let myself, like, it's a slippery slope for myself personally. If people can control it and have a drink or two, sure,
Yeah.
that's fine. Like, if you can control that and your conviction is that it's okay. But, I think like I just said, slippery slope for me and a lot of people, and
Mm.
so that's why I just personally choose not to do that anymore.
No, well, congratulations. I wish I could say 4 years. I've only ever done 8 months. That's the longest, but I'll get there. I'll get there
That's still
eventually.
good.
But
That means you're sober curious at least, right?
Oh yeah, always been big gaps in drinking. Like I just go through episodes of binge drinking, but and that's horrible, and I hate it. And every time, anyway, that's a whole other conversation. But my point was like, well, fair play to you, in fact, for going through all of that sober then and not having a crutch of, because sometimes for me, alcohol is the
Well, the
only
whole
thing.
FBI
Yeah.
raid thing, I wasn't sober,
Okay.
which was where your question kind of originated from.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yes, I was using substances at that point in time.
Not
Not
surprised.
necessarily like I mean, it was 2021 at the time, so I can't play back every single day in my head like it's a movie. But yeah, I'm sure I was still falling into that uh that that world of using alcohol. But like I mean, yeah,
I
it's all
mean,
part of it.
for such a young guy, even as brave as you are, to go through all that, I wouldn't be surprised if you were drinking heavily after that. I would have been as well. I'd be terrified. Like, the FBI,
Well,
I'd be
yeah.
like looking out my window every day, just like,
So the FBI raid happened, and then I was actually home. So I drove all the way home from Boston to Connecticut, and I like walked in at like 9 o'clock at night. Sean Hannity was on the screen, and my dad and brother were watching the TV,
oh,
and it was literally James and his lawyer on an interview with Sean Hannity on Fox News at night. And I was just sitting there because they had no idea what was going on.
really?
I had kept all this to myself. No one knew anything. No one knew anything. This was all kept up inside
Oh
for
my
years.
God.
For several years, all of this, I basically kept it all to myself. And then I told it to the world. But yes, my dad and brother were watching this and they were like, oh, wow, this is kind of cool. Like, blah, blah, blah. I'm like,
It's
yeah,
all me.
little do you know that I have actually like I'm working directly with this company, Project Veritas, right now. That's
What did
why
he?
half of this didn't feel real. Like my whole life felt fake and scripted. Like and that's another story. Like do we live through a simulation? Did any of this actually happen organically? Like I
Yeah.
do believe in like there's the free will and won't. Like we all can make decisions per se, right? But like some people say like when you watch The Matrix with Neo and his discussion with the Oracle, and it's like we really have only come here to understand the decisions that we've already actually made because everything is already predetermined. Because at the end of the day, Christ wins. God wins.
I
So,
agree with everything except, like I said before, I'm agnostic. I'm not religious, but yeah, I
well, I think that the good side wins at the end of the day. And it's what we're seeing right now is extreme darkness in the world that's being exposed and people are being given a chance to decide. People are being given a chance to choose the light or choose darkness. Do you
y-
choose like what are you choosing? Where do you want to go for like I mean, I haven't been in the afterlife, so I don't know whether eternity like what it looks like. I can't speak on it per se, but to me like God is revealing a lot in the Bible is being played out by powers that be right now to like make fun of us and they're going to present to us an antichrist figure after all of this happens. I think there's actually several antichrists out there in these figures. I think from my journey, James O'Keefe is actually an antichrist figure, but there's also Donald Trump is an antichrist figure. Elon Musk is an antichrist figure. Peter Thiel, um, several people are antichrist figures, and it's just a matter of how they play out in your life, I suppose. But like this whole thing with Neuralink, right? This microchip that they're looking to put into the side of people's heads or the back of your head and connect you to the internet. That is the mark of the beast that is prophesized in the Bible. They are literally taking the stories of the Bible and bringing them out into the real world. and it's only a matter of time. And you could also argue that the end times is already played out over and over and over again, but they're just playing it out on another level. This whole Neuralink, like I'm not sure if you're familiar with Kabbalah and gematria or whatever it's called. It's basically numbers assigned with letters, and they all have certain values. But Neuralink equals 666 in certain ciphers, meaning that the 666 is the mark in the Bible. And so the mark of the beast is what's prophesized as what basically says you cannot buy or sell. And so that's where the prophecy of, Revelations comes into play, where God's people choose to not get the mark of the beast or the Neuralink or whatever that represents. To me, it's also part of the vaccine agenda, right? Like COVID vaccine, you couldn't buy or sell, you couldn't fly, you couldn't travel, you couldn't go into certain restaurants. It was preemptively a mark.
Yeah.
No, like that
Yeah.
is real. That is what happened. And not every state in the United States per se necessarily complied with that, but there were countries involved. Canada, I'm not sure what the UK was like. I think Mexico is pretty free, right? Mexico is pretty
UK
good about all
wasn't
that.
free. Mexico's amazing. That's why I live there. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that the vaccine was more or less like a huge test,
Yeah.
and it serves as a symbol for the mark of the beast. If not, it was a form of the mark of the beast, and they're also going to use this mark of like we all have these phones. This is basically a big microchip itself, right? And
Yeah.
so they're pushing digital ID. They're pushing digital currency. We are all really controlled by money. Money, like it's currency. It's we give our energy to this.
Yeah.
If we stopped giving our energy to it, the system collapses. But we're all so far gone based off our generational traumas of how we've been lied to about what money actually is that none of us want to walk away from it because we all have big heads and we all have egos. And we don't know what the solution is outside of
Yeah.
the system that's currently in place because there's a lot
Exactly.
of fear around it because it's a big question, and to me, that's where sovereignty is. That is where we need to go. We need to become sovereign from this system, but it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of shadow work. It's going to take a lot of independence, and it's going to take a lot of reliance on the creator and on God from my perspective. That's and I'm not saying that necessarily even happens in my lifetime either, right? Like we walk away from the system, I have no idea. But to me, like that is how all of this comes into play is economic takeover and control and using that this form of economic control to force us into taking pharmaceutical products, right? Because people wouldn't have taken the product if they didn't have to lose their job, or if they weren't going to
Exactly.
lose their job
Travel.
or travel, right? Like that's where freedom comes into play. And so this system has a collar around us and has chain links, right? And they removed a lot of the chain links and they basically got a lot of people to comply into taking a product that they didn't want to take or never would have taken if their freedom wasn't threatened. And so that's part of this prophecy of Neuralink or whatever the heck it is, this digital ID system itself, right? They are the theys, whoever the theys are. I'm not saying it's the Jews or the Jesuits or whoever the theys are, whoever they,
BlackRock. Yeah.
yeah, right. Or whoever BlackRock is covering for, they are pushing a worldwide global conspiracy to use cryptocurrencies and you like turn the currency over, use this entire world debt system, turn it over into cryptocurrency, and so that they can basically control people with just literally numbers on the screen. And there's no form of cash anymore because cash is evil. You
Yeah.
can launder cash, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's all one big rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Sorry. I
No,
just
my mum agrees with all that as well. Like she tells me this as well. Hopefully she won't get mad at me for saying that because her friends. But anyway, so after everything you experienced, like out of the governments, pharmaceutical companies, media, and all the algorithms, who holds the power out of those, and or is it all of it all?
I at the end of the day, I think it's all spiritual. I think this is a spiritual warfare. This is a war between a, a dark spirit and spirit of principalities of darkness versus good and evil. And we, at the end of the day, have to choose light, like I said. And so that's where the whole Bohemian Grove conversation also comes into play, where James O'Keefe went to Bohemian Grove in summer of 2023 and admitted that to me, which to me was just the end of the line. That was my end. I was done. I
Yeah.
knew he went to the Bohemian Grove, but he admitted it on a phone call with me, which caused me to resign over the phone with him and basically confront him on my entire Pfizer story, uh, which it was an extremely hard conversation to have, but you know, I I couldn't work for someone who went to the Bohemian Grove and like there's conspiracies about the Bohemian Grove that start in like the 1910 where they were like trafficking and murdering kids and having child sacrifice basically and yeah, it's a place where the world elite go and conspire to run the world and basically manipulate humanity. And whether it's all true or not, I couldn't be working for someone involved with that. And so James O'Keefe went there in summer of 2023. He admits that to me in my documentary. And I came forward in March of 2024. And after that, I was even told that Tucker Carlson and Charlie Kirk also went with James O'Keefe. And so the whole thing with Charlie Kirk, too, is another rabbit hole. I don't
Yeah.
believe in the story of how Charlie Kirk was allegedly murdered. My perspective is that that also is all theater. And I have a Rumble video where I talk about that because I just don't believe anything I'm ever told in the mainstream media anymore.
Especially, yeah, I know, especially because you've been through it, literally the depths of one of the biggest health, corporations in the world, and then undercover journalism and everything, exposing everyone. Who do you trust now, other than God?
Not a lot of people at all. I pretty much trust myself and then I discern from there.
That's
I don't really consume a lot of content anymore either. I don't really consume that world. I mean, because I just think there's deception everywhere. I think that there's a lot of things going on in the conservative space, like with Candace Owens and like the big names, the Candace Owens, the Tucker Carlsons, the Alex Jones. They're gonna be like this new media face, this Ian Carroll character. He's also, I think they're all feds basically. So that's my perspective. I think they are all feds, and at the end of the day, they are controlled opposition meant to control how you think and manipulate you away from truth. They're going to tell you some truth. That's what controlled opposition does. They water down the truth, they muddy down the waters, and then they tell you lies as well. And so a lot of those folks that I just named, from my perspective, are controlled opposition because they create a division between the Jews and Palestine and Islam. And so that all is involved in like more prophecy. I think Albert Pike was a 33rd degree Freemason and he prophesized the first two world wars and he talked about how the Jews and Islam would fight and how each country played a role in the world wars, World War III, thus leading to the real destruction of humanity. And so I think it's possible that all those guys are involved in like real counterintelligence, just like James O'Keefe. Yeah,
it,
like and it's bad. Like it's not good. What those because if they're doing it on purpose and if they are conscious to what they're doing, they are committing crimes against humanity as well.
And the last two questions, thank you so much. This is absolutely unbelievable. If James O'Keefe was sitting here right now, what is something you might want to say to him or ask him, or do you have anything else you would ever want to say to him again?
Yeah, I'd say, James, let's sit down for an interview and go through our entire story together from start to finish. From start of me being a Pfizer whistleblower, reaching out to Project Veritas, to how you guys provided me cameras, to how, we allegedly broke these laws, and then how you got raided by the FBI, and how you also invited me to be an investigative journalist. And then I got your biggest story ever on the Jordan Tristan Walker story. And then I got my information as a Pfizer whistleblower back. And then I went to go work for you. And why you went to Bohemian Grove. He's mentioned previously that like in the phone call, he talked about how there were supporters that go there and are affiliated with his work and our work, right? Because that's what he said in the conversation. So let's just do an interview, James. That's an open invite, is what I have to say about that. Um, the last time I spoke with James was actually on a Twitter Spaces, which I confronted him in front of his audience, basically. And so there's some information on my social media at Justin.Leslie3, as well as Twitter, Justin and Just Integrity underscore on X. Those are like two main platforms that I use. But that is what I would say to James. Let's do an interview. I'll come sit down right in front of you in person and we'll go through all of this together. And you can review anything I have to say. And I can, it'll be a loving conversation for sure. But it'll be factual.
I'd love to see that. Absolutely love to see that. And thank you. And lastly, for people watching who no longer know who or what to believe, what is your advice to them? Where do they go?
For people who don't know who or what to believe, I'd say um, having a relationship with God is the most important thing. That's what got me through all this, trying to fill my God size filled emptiness and void with things like alcohol and things like lust, things like weed, things like whatever, corn, porn, masturbation, all of that. Those are all vices on you, and you are made perfect in God's image, and there are distractions everywhere. And if it's meant to cause you anxiety and depression, all these things that are not higher serving for your higher power, I would say, or higher calling, I would say it's not of um, what God wants for you. And so I'd say everyone should pray every day for the world, for a better world on this earth, even though, we don't. I believe in the power of prayer, actually, where like if we're all in a state of coherent prayer, uh, even constantly, if we can be in a state of like a meditative state of prayer every single day and speak positively into the world, it can have a ripple effect that causes positive change throughout the world. And so that's why I see a lot of that's why the powers that are and powers that be, or powers that were, we'll say, powers that were, because they are no longer in charge. They push all this fear down our throats because they want us to consume it and then bring their reality into fruition, which is not what we want, right? We don't want a reality of getting vaccinated to be able to go into stores. We don't want a reality that is built on an AI surveillance system. That's what this agenda really is at the end of the day. It's all about control. And so we all need to bring about a frequency of love because that's what God is. from my perspective, a frequency of just love and presence and coherence. And without, that's what the story of Jesus is all about. It's love, being a Son of God who came down on this earth in the form of true love. And so we should all strive to be like Christ. And that's where my relationship stems from with him. So I strive to be like him and live how he would. And yes, I always fall short. I'm not perfect. Nobody is. Um, and so that's my message for those who struggle with all of these lies and deception. If you want to consume my content, um, I make videos just about I make videos every day. I'm doing a public speaking challenge on my Instagram at justin.leslie3. I have a YouTube channel. I put those on. I haven't done long form content in a while because I'm in a doctorate of chiropractic program right now, so I'm
I was gonna
really
ask.
involved in studying for that. So the short form content is what I'm doing right now, but and it's been a while since I've done a podcast, so this is all it's good to get back on here and do my long form public speaking with you, Liv. So I
Oh,
hope that
thanks.
answers your question of
Yeah.
like for those who like if you don't know where to turn, I just say run towards God, have a relationship with him because I think that's where you will have that void
I
answered.
mean,
That's where it is.
I agree. It's just, I just don't use the word. I pray in my own way. I just don't use the word. God. I pray to the universe, and I pray to what I call my team. Because my dad's dead, my brother's dead, everyone's dead basically, except my mum. So I like ask them for help. Then I'll pray to the universe and whatnot. So for any agnostics and people who may not necessarily Christian or out there, is that okay in your head, or do you think it specifically needs to be God and Jesus? And then,
I think whatever your higher up power ends up being, as long as it's not like a dark demon, that's fine and okay. I use Christianity and as as my access to spirituality, and I have had from my experience, I have had encounters with Christ. So that's my personal experience, and ever since I've gone through uh Holy Spirit and water baptisms, I just feel fulfilled. I've like entered this space of feeling truly whole, because of embracing a relationship with him. And so that's my perspective. That's not to demonize other people who might be agnostic or Buddhist or Islamic or whatever religion you practice. That's okay. I'm not here to, shame people for doing where they're at right now. I'm sharing my human experience, and you know, I'm I come from a very logical
yeah,
background as well, like with studying logical fallacies and things. And people have pointed out like the potential logical fallacies with, Christ and Jesus and how, this stories about Jesus have been manipulated and edited in the Bible and everything else.
right.
But to me, like Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and following and being a disciple of him is a representation of living in your highest self, living in what they call I don't think Christ consciousness is a bad thing. People, say that's a new age thing. I think Christ consciousness is living like Jesus would in your
Yeah,
flesh, right? And so that's not, I think like that's basically how I embrace my spirituality. And so that relationship with him is basically having it play out through how I feel like Jesus would live through me, right? And so, it's a constant conversation with him and, in my head, right? I'm always talking to him is
yeah,
how I play it out. So, and however you access your higher power, right? How like AA talks about having a higher power, similar way of looking at it, similar lens is having that higher power and leaning into your higher power versus trying to answer everything yourself, right? Because
yeah,
I'm once you once you're okay admitting that you don't have to have the answer to everything and you don't know anything really at the end of the day, we don't really know anything as
Yeah,
humans.
I'm happy knowing that. That's why I'm agnostic, because that's my is like I don't know until I die, or but I know
Yeah,
I have to be
that
a
and
good
that's
person.
that's I'm a big freedom guy. You're allowed to have the freedom of that perspective. I think my perspective on that is like even with chiropractic philosophy and vitalism, there are um there are principles involved with chiropractic philosophy and the creators of chiropractic, they bring in the philosophy of universal intelligence, innate intelligence, and how there is a universal intelligence that created our world, where there's no doubt about it. Like there is intelligence in every single thing within, you and I. We each have innate intelligence in us that like we innately just wake up and our body innately knows how to heal a cut on our bodies, right? And
Yeah, yeah,
without this intelligence, if you remove this intelligence, our bodies are just matter. It's nothing. It's flesh. There's something about us when we are alive and looking at each other through the screen versus if you remove the intelligence, you die. And so you can't have one without the other. It's a triune effect of innate intelligence, um, intelligence, matter, and uh, what's the other one? Innate intelligence, matter, and force. Force is the third part of the triune. So where you can't have force without the other two as well by being able to bring about motion in the world. And so you need all three. I wasn't the best at explaining that little part,
no,
but
you're amazing. Yeah,
it's people can tie all like you can kind of tie that into Christianity as well, based off the fact that there's Father above, and Christ is the innate intelligence who played out in a perfect story of man, right?
yeah.
Who, you know, yeah, that's my perspective on it all. So I'm a big freedom guy. I believe that, you know, I don't believe in necessarily Satanism per se, but if you want to practice other religions, if you want to be spiritual, that's cool too. But I feel that for my story, filling my God void with a relationship with Jesus has just been very fulfilling. So I
Yeah.
encourage those who've been questioning, just look into it. I'm currently still reading the Bible all the way through, so I don't have all that like scripture memorized or anything else. I just, I embrace that as my spiritual gift.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Justin. It's been an absolute pleasure and honor as well, because we've covered a lot, and you're amazing and brave and fantastic, and I can't wait to get this out there.
Thank you for
Thank
having me
you.
on, Liv. For those who want to check out my documentary, it is at justintegrity.net. And I said my socials already. I'm
I'm gonna
sure.
put everything at the end slide. I will put all your website, socials, documentary, and everything so that people can see. Because you have to go watch it, everyone. It's freaking fascinating. So yeah, thank you so much. I'm glad
Thank
we
you,
got to
my
do
friend.
this. All
Appreciate you.
right. I will
All
speak
right,
to you
bye.
soon. Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Sweet.